Doppleganger by Nicholas B. Morris.
On my late morning walk, I noticed a man on my trail. I didn't recognize him, just noticed that he followed me. I made turns that I wouldn't normally, and he copied me every time. He kept a fair distance, but gained ground with every step. I decided to borrow an unattended bike, and once I started pedaling, he dropped behind me quickly. I thought I saw him go for his phone, so I turned downhill and headed for the center of town. The pursuit left me famished, and the sun hung high enough in the sky to have lunch. I stashed the bike behind a dumpster in case he had called me in to whomever he worked for, and stopped in a little Chinese restaurant called the Moongate Bistro. The place has my favorite qualities: good food, cheap prices, fast service, a view of the street, and an easy escape into the back alley. I ordered my favorite dish, sesame chicken, and kept an eye on the street. I finished my meal and asked for the check. It came back with 2 fortune cookies. I paid in cash and opened the first. Its fortune looked as bland as the color of the cookie. You shall be very prosperous. Hoping the staff responsible for spell-checking the fortunes hadn't also cooked the food, I crushed the first cookie and opened the second. It read, "Wonder not if the world hates you." As I ate the second cookie, I contemplated its fortune. Should I not wonder because it loved me, or because its contempt of me was so open that I shouldn't bother wondering? The cookie tasted no different than the dozens of others I had eaten previously at the Moongate. No better, no worse. It was just a cookie, its unusual fortune of no particular consequence, just less generic than others. But this message held a unique meaning. Someone meant that message specifically for me. The street bustled, especially for the time of day, early afternoon, and it looked like a rain shower might soon roll in. I thought of the cookie again, and the fact that I had no umbrella and several dozen blocks to walk. Still, that seemed hardly enough reason for such an omen. From the corner of my eye, a man caught my attention, mostly because he wore the same light tan sport coat as me. He styled his hair in the exact same manner as mine. Even his walk looked similar to my own gait. He turned, glanced at me, and kept moving in the other direction. His face reflected a replica of my own. I followed after him, determined to prove myself wrong, or, if not wrong, then ask who had sent him, and if he knew anything about the message in the cookie. He maintained a brisk walk, but the fact that I knew his exact outfit and the pace at which I should move led me to catch up with him before long, and I kept a safe distance from which to keep an eye on him. He went into a bookstore, and seconds later I entered behind him. He climbed the stairs, browsing through the fiction section. I moved into drama and poetry, picked up a book, and pretended to read. He worked his way around the room, picking up many books, but holding none of them for long. I got glimpses at his face, but could not definitively say, one way or the other, that he was or was not my double. I hoped, if nothing else, he would look over at me, notice that we wore the same clothes, perhaps comment on the fact we had dressed alike, and confirm our differences, if not by look, then by voice, so that I could go on about my day. But he never glanced in my direction. He eventually chose a book from the sci-fi section, The Invisible Man, I think, and made his way downstairs. Obliged to see this through, I picked up a different book from the one I'd pretended to read and followed him. I saw him standing on line and took my place several people behind him, hoping we could get the same cashier, and maybe he or she would tell me. But we didn't. He had a tall man with a mustache, and I had a small girl with highlights in her dark hair. As I paid for my book, William Wilson and Other Tales by Edgar Allan Poe, apparently, I asked the girl if she'd noticed someone who looked like me online just before me. I don't pay attention to anyone before they stand in line, or after they stand in line, she said, pushing the receipt and change at me. I can help who's next, she said to the woman behind me. I took my book and moved toward the front of the store. I could not see in which direction he'd gone. Dejected, I started toward home again. The rain fell in fat drops, cold when they hit the skin on my hands and face. I owned a book in which I had no interest, couldn't find my doppelganger, and a strange fortune cookie had ruined my day. I stood in the rain until the light stopped the flow of cars, allowing me to cross the street. Wonder not if the world hates you, indeed. And then he appeared before me, stepping into the Moongate Bistro. I smiled, moved a few shops down from him, popped inside, and browsed near the window. Other pedestrians joined me in waiting out the storm, so the clerks paid me little attention, and for a half hour I looked at the same items over and over again. As I waited, keeping as close a watch as I could, I wondered if he would actually eat or gather information on me, what I'd eaten, or perhaps my reaction to the fortune. Maybe he'd spotted me and slipped into Moongate to escape through the back alley. Maybe he watched me even now, him or one of his associates, like the man who followed me earlier, boxing me in before they make their move. He finally came out and moved toward my house. I put the book I'd bought on a shelf and followed him. The rain continued to fall, though not as heavily as before. Every turn he made, I gained a little ground. Finally, I caught up with him. Even his hair hung in the same pattern as mine, droplets of rain clinging off of the exact same locks. His hands shared the same texture as mine, and from my close vantage point and with my sharp eyes, I discerned a small white scar along his left thumb, the same size and shape of the scar on my own thumb. "Excuse me," I said, or murmured, because I had to repeat it louder a few steps later. "Excuse me." He finally turned to me, and, as I suspected, his face mirrored my own. From that distance, no more than a few feet, I could not make a mistake. "Yes," he said. No form of recognition lighted on his face. "Don't you find it strange we look so much alike?" I panted, moving alongside him. "You look like me. I look just like you." "Oh," he said, keeping his stride, my stride. "A little, I guess." "Exactly," I said. "I saw you a ways back and had to know if you were my doppelganger or something." "No," he said. "I don't think so." "At least admit we dress alike," I said. "I'm wearing the same jacket as you. Your hair is just like mine." He looked at me, puzzled. "Not really." His voice trailed off. "Yes, we do." I put a hand in front of him, brought him to a stop. "We do," I said. "Fine," he said. "You agree that we look alike?" "Sure." "Exactly alike?" He shook his head. "If you think so." "I don't think so," I said, stepping closer to him. "We do." "Okay," he said. "Can I go now?" "And you don't find it coincidental that we look alike?" He shrugged. "The world's a weird place." "And it hates me," I said. "That was the message you wanted me to get, isn't it?" "What?" "How did you find me?" I grabbed a handful of his jacket. How many of you are there? What are you talking about? His pupils darted back and forth. You heard me. That's my house right there. I pointed across the street. How did you find me? That's my house, he said. What do you want from me? Water ran down his face. Whether sweat or rain, I could not say. Let go of me, man! He struggled and broke free from my grip, but he stumbled and fell backward into the street. A car slammed on its brakes and hit him, sending him over the roof and onto the pavement. As the blood pooled around him, I conceded one of his points. His jacket had 3 buttons, and mine only 2. His looked a little darker as well, more olive than tan, which I hadn't noticed before. Police and ambulance arrived several minutes later. The lady who hit him moaned in hysterics. The police required a statement from me. I told them I'd ask him a question, and, in answering, he had stumbled into the street. An accident, I pointed out. They seemed to agree. No one commented on our resemblance. The rain hammered down, pounding the sidewalk beneath my feet. I tried to get into my house after they completed their reports, but the keys no longer worked. My attempts to pry open a window failed as well. I looked around. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. Not even the birds sang. They, whoever sent the doppelganger for me, knew my location. I moved in the opposite direction they would expect, back the way I'd come. I stepped into a cafe, sat down at their bar, ordered hot tea. I asked where I could find the bathroom. My soaked clothes felt pasted onto my skin, which felt sticky for reasons I didn't understand. Perhaps some of his blood splashed on me during the accident. In the bathroom, I washed my hands, first with cold water, then soap, then hot water, then cold again. Small flecks of blood resisted cleaning, but most of it scrubbed off easily. My clothes clung to my body, wet but not stained, so I washed my face. My face. My face no longer belonged to me. Someone else's face stared back from the mirror. I touched my face, and he touched his jaw. We reached for each other. I felt his fingers. I forged a connection between reflection and reality until they converged, identical. Only tile resided behind the bathroom mirror. No camera spied on the bathroom. They bugged it then. How else could they track my movements so quickly? Maybe they put someone else on me when I gave the statement to the police. Maybe the police knew about it too and waited for me to make a move. Only a matter of time before they sent the next doppelganger to kill me after the new change to my face. I had to keep moving. I left the bathroom, waved off the tea from the barista at the counter, stepped onto the street, and headed toward the bus terminal. Or would have, had not a man with my face, my exact face, the new one, walked past me at precisely that moment. I had no choice but to follow him.
Thank you for listening to Doppleganger by Nicholas B. Morris. The author grew up in Arkansas but fell in love with Colorado. His stories and other assorted writings have been published in the Harpoon Review, Cliterature, Connotation Press, Danse Macabre Online, and Nebo. He has published 2 short story collections, the full-length Tapeworm and the chapbook The Boy in the Well, both with now sadly defunct Monkey Puzzle Press. You can buy copies of Tapeworm from him directly on Amazon. He works his dream job as assistant professor of humanities at the Community College of Denver and watches endless reruns of Star Trek with his partner, Alyssa Pacini. Caleb Hicks produced the original audio for the narrative. He and Mr. Morris worked closely together on the spoken album of Mr. Morris's stories called The Boy in the Well. All music and sound effects, save the Paul-stretched flute, were taken from the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org, an amazing community of artists that set out to help one another through the sharing of their art. Lazy Monk contributed the doorbells, Jormap contributed the street sounds, and Edity Joe contributed the epic orchestra piece. A sincere thank you to the artists in freemusicarchive.org for their contribution. All of these sounds are being used under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike License 4.0. The Paul-stretched flute is an original sound effect. This episode of Prose has been produced by me, Jared I. McGee. If you enjoyed this episode, please head over to iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher to leave us a review. As always, thank you for listening to Prose, and keep your eyes peeled for our next episode.